welcome to the Healing Journey. So today I have with me Kara Melendy. How are you, Kara?
Good. So fun to be here with you.
Good. I'm so glad you joined. So Kara is an astrologer, an Akashic record practitioner, and a spiritual business coach. So I'm so excited today to dive into the world of astrology.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
so much to discuss around this. And we're also sisters. We should say that. People
Yes,
may,
yeah. So Kara is my sister. So if we
yeah,
have a similar voice, that's that's probably why. So I feel like astrology is becoming such a big thing. Like you're hearing about it more and more on social media. There's more and more celebrities talking about it. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm so excited to dive into this today. So let's get started. So tell us a little more about what a birth chart is. So I know when we're born, we all have one, but other than that, I'm going to let you take over and just share a little more about what a birth chart is and also how it can help on our healing journey.
Absolutely. Yes. So a birth chart is basically the snapshot of the sky at the time of our birth, and it brings us back to our soul blueprint. So there's so much that's contained in a birth chart. And my background is actually in psychology. So before diving into the world of more energy work and spirituality, I got my master's in psychology, and I used to be obsessed with personality tests because I always had this desire to better understand myself, better understand the world around me, other people, how I can best interact with them. And
Mhm.
then when I came across astrology and birth charts, I'm like, this is the best personality test out there. Like, it is so good. And it goes deeper than just like understanding different aspects of our personality. It certainly shows that. It shows our strengths, our talents, our ways of interacting with other people. But even deeper than that, it's the journey of our soul. So we can look at a birth chart and we can even look at past lives. We can look at the gifts and talents we brought into this lifetime, and we can look at what our soul is wanting to evolve into this lifetime. So there's so much contained in a birth chart. And I know with your beautiful podcast, your focus is on healing, and there's a lot in our birth chart that shows healing. I also work with it with my clients in terms of career path or specifically their business, because there's so much in there as well that shows our highest path for business success, like our style of receiving financial abundance, our style of
Mhm.
communicating. So there's a lot we can learn from exploring and studying.
Right. I know. And I remember the first time I saw a birth chart, like it can actually be really confusing to read until you actually know like how to read them. I remember you did one of my first readings for me actually. And I mean, the amount of information that I did learn just about myself, like personally, I found for me, like it really just helped me make sense of myself. I'm like, oh, so this is why I'm drawn so much to doing this type of work, or this seems to be a common pattern in my relationships. And I was so surprised at how much it actually did match with the reading that I got for my birth chart.
Yeah. Oh, people are
Right.
blown away. They're like, how do you know this about me? I'm like, well, it's all in the chart. I'm telling you, I can see, like, you're looking at someone's soul.
It shows in
And
the
there's
cosmos.
yes,
Right?
absolutely. Yes. And like in addition to our birth chart, which is a beautiful place to start when we're looking at astrology and like understanding ourselves and our path, we also have transits, which is known as the current cosmic weather. And that's where we
Ooh.
can get into predictive astrology, where we see how what's currently happening in the cosmos is aligning with our birth chart. And this really helps us make sense of different things we're currently navigating in our life, different themes that are showing up, or even different portals of opportunity that are opening for us that we can really tap into.
Right. So it could be helpful, maybe anyone even who's going through a transition or they're navigating a new career, they want to move into a new career. It sounds like looking at their birth chart could actually help provide direction to that.
Oh, absolutely. It brings tremendous amount of clarity for anybody that is looking at like a decision they're facing in their life. Like, what direction do I go? Whether that is in a relationship or in their career path or even a move. Like, there's so much clarity we can start to bring through on what's going to be most aligned for you. Because another way I see astrology is we choose our birth chart. because we know, like from a soul perspective, not a human perspective, sometimes our human self could really question, like, why did I choose this? Why would I choose these
Right.
experiences? But higher consciousness and perspective, we choose it because we have like that bird's eye view of what we want to navigate this lifetime. So we actually come fully equipped with everything we need to thrive on this life journey. And our birth chart is another way of really understanding that.
I love that. And that can be so helpful, I think, for anybody going through like tough times, right? And it's like, why is this happening to me? And it's that, you have everything to be able to handle those tough situations, right? Like you said, like you're already equipped to handle it, right? And our higher self, our spiritual self knows that. Sometimes we can get caught up in the physical world and our ego. But I think it's remembering if you're going through tough times, you are equipped to handle it. Like your soul can handle it. And sometimes it's just that reconnection back to your soul because potentially you're just too caught up kind of in this world and the ego mind. But finding that connection within can help guide you out of whatever challenge you're having.
Yeah, beautifully said. It really does help shift our perspective, and our perspective is everything as we move throughout life. The stories we create, the meaning we attribute to what's happening really does determine our experience within it. And with astrology, we can also see with anything in our birth chart and the transits, there's a higher octave or lower octave expression of it. And because we're human, we tend to dance between the two as well. Like we'll be more in the evolved expression and sometimes fall into the shadow. But we always want to move to like, what's the highest octave potential here? Like for how I can work with these energies. So if we are in a challenging time, we're still human, so we get to feel all the emotions around that and all the frustration, and then ideally come back to a space of like I see it as like initiation portals, even. So I reframe it
Mm,
from instead of a challenge, what if this is an initiation portal? What is this teaching me? Who am I called to become as I move through this experience? And then that shifts our perspective as well. And astrology can absolutely help with understanding like why
right.
this may feel like a difficult period, but what your soul is wanting to learn on the other side of this. And there is always another side where we are going to move through it.
Yes,
We're not
yeah. It's so true. And sometimes it's remembering that we can get so caught up in whatever's happening that we can lose sight that it's all temporary, that we will move through it and we'll look back and it'll just be part of our journey. And like you said, an initiation into something that's better, right? And everybody, I want to talk a little bit about sun signs and any other signs in the chart. So I feel like today everybody knows their sun sign. Like even if you're not into astrology, if you ask someone their sun sign, they know what it is. Are there any other major signs other than the sun sign in our chart that really has an influence on us?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the sun sign is just the beginning. So the sun sign is our zodiac sign. So that's where people say, like, well, you're a Leo and a Cancer, you'd be an Aries, a Libra, right? It's our zodiac sign. And it is just one piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. And some people really resonate with their astrology sign and others don't. And there's different reasons for that because it is just one piece of the puzzle. So people that really tend to resonate with their sun sign, we see that energy in other areas of their birth chart as well. So in addition to the sun sign, there's the big three we often hear of, and that's our sun, moon, and rising. So, this is actually what got me to dive deeper into astrology as well. So, I always had a love for astrology. Like, I don't know if you remember when we were kids too, but I know at school, like I would read everybody's birth chart on the schoolyard. Like I was up with it, right? Like I just loved it. And, that was a very elementary understanding of astrology, having fun with like the little write-ups and horoscopes in the paper. But years and years later, I had graduated with my master's in psychology. I was starting to work with clients, and that's when astrology spoke to me again. So this time I went a lot deeper, and it was actually through learning my moon sign that I fell in love with astrology again because it uncovered a piece of me that my sun sign never captured. So our moon sign is the sign that the moon is in when we are born, and It governs over our instincts, our intuition, our emotions, and what we need to really feel safe in the world or in new environments. So, through understanding our moon sign, we gain a piece of understanding our soul journey that our sun sign doesn't capture. So, our sun sign or zodiac is more our personality traits, whereas our moon is our inner world. So, the moon sign actually is really big in relationship compatibility with people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we people will talk about like sun sign compatibility. There's a factor to that, like our personality is compatible, but actually moon sign is even more important, as you can see, right? When you know the qualities of a moon sign, because that emotional connection, and do you feel safe with this person? Do you feel understood by them? Would is so important in relationships, whether friendships, romantic relationships. So the moon sign is key. So I would really, encourage people to look at that. And then our rising sign is the sign rising over the eastern horizon at the time we were born. And that's our outer image. So people actually see our rising sign first, especially when we're just getting to know someone. We are more likely to see the characteristics of their rising sign because that's how they present in the world. And then as we get to know them, we see more of the sun sign characteristics, their personality. So those are the big three that are really good to begin with.
Ah, that's interesting. And yeah, I know in like Vedic astrology, like when they do arranged marriages in India, they actually look at the moon sign. So that makes sense. Like you were saying, it can be good for relationship compatibility. So it's the
Huge.
moon, it's more of like the emotions.
Yes, the moon is our emotion, our inner world, our intuitive response. The other thing for relationship compatibility would be our Venus placement. So Venus governs over our relationships. When I work with it from a business perspective, I help clients understand their Venus placement because that's what makes them magnetic. Like those are the traits they want to embody in order to open up to receiving. So it can be a glimpse into like their financial codes as well. But we can also look at it from a relationship lens of what we're drawn to in relationships and how we show up in relationships. So you can see that like the sun sign is just like one part of it, right? We want to understand each of the placements in our chart. So each of the planetary placements, and then depending where people are on their journey with astrology, that we can always go deeper with it. Like we can also look at what are the aspects the planets are making with one another as well. And then of course the cosmic weather forecasts, the transits is another aspect of really understanding what's being activated in our birth chart at any given time.
Mm. And that is helpful to know, right? Because sometimes, like, I remember, like, I used to read my horoscope all the time. And, like, a lot of people just will read their horoscope. And then I'd be like, but this doesn't really apply to me today. I can't really relate to it. And it's because there's so much more going on than just like the horoscope, which is usually, I think, based on the sun sign, right? It's just like, okay, well, that's not considering the person's moon sign. That's not considering their rising sign. That's not considering all the other aspects of it. So, I think that really helps kind of explain sometimes if you're reading your horoscope and
Right.
it's just not making sense, right? It's because there's probably a lot of other stuff going on at a deeper level that obviously a general horoscope isn't addressing.
No, exactly. I see those as just very fun. And also, like, we see on YouTube now people, going a little deeper, but it's still based on like you listen to your signs, maybe forecast for the month or the year or whatever it is. And I actually encourage people, if they're going to do that, listen to the forecast for your rising sign because that's going to be more accurate. More accurate still, of course, is like work with an astrologer, know your
Yeah.
birth chart, and know the exact layout. But if you're looking at those videos, I always tell people like listen to your rising sign even over the sun sign forecast, and that's going to align a little bit more with the layout of your birth chart.
Interesting. And I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, but can astrology explain why we're facing certain challenges in life? Like, are there certain transits in people's charts that are particularly challenging and maybe almost like universal initiations that we would all go through?
Totally. Yeah. It gives so much clarity on that. So there's many transits that could lead to that. So even just looking at our birth chart alone, we can begin to see that right away in terms of there's different aspects in astrology, which is basically referring to how the planets are communicating with one another or in flow with one another. So in birth charts, when we see trines, that's a harmonious flow of energy, and it tends to be what comes very natural for people. It's like gifts that sometimes we don't see, but other people so clearly see in us. And then there's square formations that are actually more challenging for us. They cause tension, but they can also spark growth and expansion because we tend to become aware of those aspects in our chart or in our life, you could say, that are more challenging. And those, again, are the initiation portals. If we see it that way, it can be an opportunity where we really strengthen our character and where we grow. And then there's also, of course, the cosmic weather, the transits. So some famous ones are the Saturn return.
Right. That's the one I feel like
That's
everybody kind of knows about, even if you don't know astrology much, like everyone knows that dreaded Saturn return is what I call it.
the infamous Saturn return. Yeah, because Saturn is connected to our karma, and it's kind of connected to bringing tough lessons. Like, I personally never really enjoy a Saturn transit. I like because they are challenging. So a Saturn return happens for all of us around the age of 27 to 30 would be our first Saturn return. And then it happens again every 30 years. So we may have three throughout our life, depending on how long we are on the earth plane. And
Mhm.
each of them are going to manifest a little differently. But that first one gets everybody's attention because it's at such a pivotal time in our life, right? Where we're heading into our 30s and we tend to be reflecting on a lot. Am I happy with how my life is going? And this is where we can see separations or divorces happening for people. Not
Mhm.
always. It's not like everybody has their Saturn return and gets divorced, but it
Or
does tend to be a time.
marriages even, right?
Yeah,
Like a
or
lot of
marriage.
people seem to get married as well, either married or divorced.
Yeah, because it's these pivotal turning point. Absolutely. Yeah. You brought that in. That can be a time for a lot of people where they're getting married and they're creating that foundation because Saturn is also the foundation we create for our life. It's like that core structure. So, divorce or marriage, also where we see big career shifts, or it could
Mhm.
be and this can manifest differently because we do have free will. So some people, they really reap the rewards that they've put in, and that's when they can start to see expansion in their career happening at that time, or we can see career changes, or we can see people just questioning, do I feel happy and aligned with what I'm creating? Because Saturn does really like it connects with career and our success and like our public standing in the world. So all of those things come into question. So yeah, that's the Saturn return. Another one that may be interesting for people is when we hear about the midlife crisis. So
Right.
our early 40s. So that is actually from an astrological lens is a Uranus opposition. So it's when our natal Uranus is opposing transiting Uranus, and that happens early 40s, so like 40 to 41, 42. If we want to know exactly where these happen for us, the time frame, we would just find the location of the planet in our chart and then look at the transits as well. So in this example, when is Uranus opposing your natal Uranus in your chart? And it's so interesting, right? Because it's a time in life where we often hear people like question a lot. It's even been termed like the midlife crisis. And
Yeah.
in astrology, Uranus is the awakener or the disruptor. So it doesn't
Mhm.
care about the status quo or what we have created. It's about shaking it all up in order to align you with a different path, with your highest path. So this can be a time in people's life. If they don't feel aligned or happy with what they've created, they tend to question everything, or it can feel like a very confusing time. But
Mhm.
another way to see it is like the awakener aspect. This can also be when we are awakening to what really lights us up and what we really want. And I think that's a phase in people's life as well, where they're more hope, like ideally less concerned about out like the external norms
Mhm.
or what other people think or people
Yeah.
pleasing. Starts to be a time where they're like, no, like I'm gonna live life on my terms. Like, what is it I want? So
Mhm.
that's another one that we don't hear about as much, but is a very pivotal time in people's life journey.
Yeah. And then I guess the third one would be around retirement, wouldn't it? Like generally when people retire, is it? Or maybe a little later than that, but potentially could
Mm.
be depending. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean, depending, yeah, when people go through that like phase of retirement, another one, so it's like it's the healing podcast, like another actual thing that's really important when it comes to healing is the placement of Chiron in our chart. So
Right.
Chiron is an asteroid, not a planet, an asteroid known as the wounded healer in astrology.
Mm.
So it's where we carry a lot of insecurity or pain from past lives, people that don't resonate with the idea of past life. You could also see it as connected to early childhood life experiences. That is actually the key to our greatest growth and healing. So around the age of retirement, and again, that's broad because that could be different for different people, but like like 50s, early 50s is when we tend to go through a Chiron return. So it's
Oh,
when we are
wow.
also looking at healing, our healing journey, and we can have maybe past traumas or things surfacing again,
Mhm.
not to keep us stuck there, but to give us an opportunity to do that deeper layer of healing. Or the second Saturn return as well could also fall around the time of retirement, which makes sense.
Mm.
Okay, what's next? Am I happy with what I've created? Where do I want to go next? So, yeah.
Yeah, and these kind of initiations, they are kind of like spiritual awakenings. Like speaking of the midlife crisis, like a lot of people now I've seen are starting to reframe it as you're just more spiritually awakened. Like you just don't care as much about the external world and you're more focused on just following your own path, right? And I think it's nice how they're reframing that because sometimes a midlife crisis can have like almost a negative connotation. And it's like, no, they're just becoming more awakened. Maybe they're living out dreams that they never got to and they want it now. Maybe they want to have that red convertible car, like all these things, right? So it's like, it's nice that kind of the attitude towards that is changing, right? And when we're going through these tough transits, like especially like the Saturn return, what can we do to help navigate? Like, I know it's always remembering like this is temporary and kind of like what we talked about earlier is like I have the skills to handle it because my soul is bringing it to me now and it's bringing it to me because I can handle it and get through this. Do you have any other recommendations on how people can navigate through these challenging transits?
Yeah, I think the first thing is going back to like what's the meaning we are attributing to it. So even when
Mhm.
you talk about like the midlife crisis, like it sounds like doom and gloom, but if we look at it as a spiritual awakening, suddenly we're like a little more excited about it. So a lot of it comes down to how we're framing the experiences in our life. So always looking at the meaning we are attributing to what's unfolding. And I like to ask, like, is this helpful? Is this useful? Like a long time ago, I got away from this idea of like good or bad or right or wrong because I just don't see the world so much through that lens. But I
Yeah.
do like to ask, is this useful? Is the meaning I'm attributing to this experience helping me? Is this useful? If not, is there a way to see this that would be more helpful? And I think also coming back to our power as well, and even reminding ourselves, like during those difficult transits or difficult times in our life, looking for evidence of all the things we have successfully navigated on our path.
Mhm.
Like sometimes we forget that, but if we look at what we've already moved through, we begin to see our strength. We begin to see, oh, I'm alive, I'm still here. So I do always get to the other side. So I think that's another way to look at it. But basically it's all in how we frame it. And I think having support as we move through those times is really key too. Like we don't have to do this on our own. There's so much help out there if we're willing to like reach out and receive it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that recognition like you said, like I've been through initiations and challenging times before and I got through it. So what makes me think I wouldn't get through it again, right? And sometimes we just need that reminder. And okay, so for anyone new to astrology, do you have any advice for them on what steps they can take? I mean, everyone already knows their sun sign. Would it be like maybe stepping into figuring out what their moon sign is, potentially even talking to an astrologer?
Yes. Well, of course. So, like, working with an astrologer would be the ideal. But yeah, the next step looks sun, moon, and rising because that's going to be a good place to start in uncovering the other pieces of your chart and just getting to know that. And then again, you could branch out to other areas and look at like the location of the your Mercury placement would be your communication. Venus could be relationships. There's also knowing like angles in the chart. So we have our rising. We also have the IC, the DC, the MC. I'm using like abbreviations for those, but that it tends to be how they're labeled if you pull up your birth chart. So you could also, anybody that's wondering what next steps to take in their career path or what that highest path looks like, you would look at your MC, also known as the midheaven, and that shows a lot of the characteristics for your career path. So I guess another way to frame it would be what are people's focus at this time? So if they're looking at
Right.
healing, looking at career, if they're looking at maybe navigating a difficult situation, that would determine what you look at in a chart because there is just so much information there. So you could even start from that lens of like, what am I really wanting clarity on in this at this
Mm.
time in my life? And what aspects of a birth chart would help me see that clarity? So starting with the larger theme.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Kara. If anyone has more questions for you, how can they reach out and get a hold of you?
Yeah, this was so fun today. I love that we got to connect and like, yeah, talk about all things astrology.
I
So,
know, me too. I love astrology. Honestly, it's like what's that saying? Is it by like JP Morgan that if you want to be a billionaire, like hire an astrologist? Anyone can be a millionaire, but if you want to be a billionaire, hire an astrologist, right? Like it's amazing how many people use astrology that you'd never think use astrology. Business
yeah.
people, people in politics. Like it's really
Oh,
cool.
they really do. It's like it's a secret to people that really want to
Yes.
and better understanding like their blueprint and their energies. Yeah, I love that quote. I saw it going around on Instagram too. Like millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. Like, yes,
It's so
secret.
true.
Um, Yeah, so I'll share my links with you if you want to share
Perfect.
with your community. YouTube, I do new and full moon ceremony, or not ceremonies, but I share about the new and full moon every month. So anyone wanting to learn more about astrology, I pull up my screen, I share the chart, we go over different aspects. So YouTube, on Instagram, I share too, and I also work closely with the Akashic records. So I tend to weave the two together because both astrology and the records bring us back to our soul blueprint. And
Mm.
then I really love helping people work with that blueprint to create expansion in their business or on their soul path, like what they're really here to do. I also have a cool freebie I can share with you as well.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah, on the Prosperous Soul, that works a little bit more with the records, but I feel like some of your community may be interested in tapping into that
Mhm.
idea of like prosperity and abundance and creating that in their life. So I have a really good free mini series on that I can share with you too.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, you'll have to send it to me and I will put the link in when I post the video on YouTube. Thank you so much, Kara, for joining us. I learned so much today about astrology and have a great day.
Thanks for having me. Bye.